What's up, our lovely listeners? And apologies for the tremendous technical error. Listen, as I like to say in the business, it happens to the best of us and to the worst of us. Okay? Tech difficulties, do not play favorites, buddy. It's okay. But if in fact you have missed the first 15, 20 minutes of the episode, the good news is that will be on the recording that will be available in all of your podcast catchers of choice. In which case, the flub here in the middle will be edited out. Rick, what do you think? Do you want to go back to the beginning, or do you want to keep pressing on?
I feel bad, guys. Man, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened, but
we were right in the middle of the summary. In fact, I had just said the words tentacled, so you guys are missing out.
You missed out on a lot. So yeah, it's up to you, man. We can start from the top, or we could summarize.
I feel like we were jiving too. All right,
I know.
we're gonna cut that intro in the recorded audio version, okay? And we're gonna edit this seamlessly as if nothing happened. If you're with us live, welcome, good to see you. And apologies, condolences, in fact. But the intro, we did the intro. We're talking about New Jedi Order Victory, Edge of Dadgummit. These are the longest titles.
Yeah.
Not that one. That's a book that doesn't exist, Rick. That doesn't exist. Okay, yes. We're talking about Edge of Victory 1 and 2, the duology, Conquest and Rebirth. There we go. These are great books. I can't wait to talk about them. In fact, we've been talking about them for a half hour.
We have. So
we're going to press on. We did some behind the scenes. We talked about how these were a replacement for the Nightfall trilogy, and then we were summarizing. So I just finished the summary for the first book, and now Rick is not going to mess this up. He is, in fact, now going to do the summary for Rebirth.
Yes. Let's do that, guys. Let's do that. But seriously, though, if you haven't checked out Conquest, it's a great book, and Jared has a quality summary that you should have been there for. But here we go. We're going to do the summary of Rebirth now. In the aftermath of the attack on Yavin 4, Luke and Mara flee the capital when Borsk Veila orders Luke's arrest. They set up then a new Jedi base named Shelter Deep within the Maw installation with a temporary home on board Booster Tarek Star Destroyer, the Errant Venture. Nenyim takes up the mantle of her recently deceased master, in which she begins to uncover shocking truths about the Yuuzhan Vong overlord, Shimra, which this is the Shaper we're talking about. She is assisted in her tasks by the Onami, the Shamed One Jester, who serves Shimra. Kip Duran requests help from Jaina and Rogue Squadron to take out a Yuuzhan Vong superweapon at Cernbidal. Then he asked Jaina to be his apprentice. So all kinds of interesting dynamics then. Turns out that Kip Duran is a dirty liar, and he was covering up the truth that the site is actually a ship womb, developing non-military ships with the non-military Yuuzhan Vong civilians. Yeah. So that was bad. But our other heroes are also lured into a trap at Yagdul to help save the Given species. And they challenge Nominor to a duel, but he flees. And after some heroics, they escape as well. Finally, the climax of the book, Mara gives birth to her son, Ben Skywalker, combining hers and Luke's force abilities with their emerging child to also rid her body of all the traces of the comb spore illness that she had.
Man, what a book. There's a lot happening.
Yeah, it was a lot.
All right, so I've already spoiled it in the first half of the episode, which is, I think, Conquest is absolutely one of the greatest Star Wars books ever written. For me, it's top 10. It's probably a 9 out of 10, if not a 10 out of 10. And it's fantastic, spectacular. I think, however, Rebirth is a hot mess. It's well written. Like, the writing style's good, but there's so many plot points.
Yeah.
It is not top tier for me. I think Conquest, however, is.
That's fair.
How about you?
Yeah. I don't think I understood how much we were going to lean into Anakin on Rebirth. Or was it Conquest? Rebirth's the first one?
Yeah.
Which one's first? Conquest?
Conquest.
Okay. Sheesh. Yeah, I didn't realize how much we're going to lead into Anakin. And so at first I was kind of like, I felt like I was reading another Junior Jedi Knight book, which is not a problem. I just was like, okay, this is interesting.
He leans hard into that. Yeah.
He does, for sure, which was great. And I'm thankful that I did read that before we started this, because there was so much there that was like, oh, cool. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that book was spectacular. A lot of fun, really invested in this weird romantic connection between Tahiri and Anakin. And that was a fun little story to follow. And man, some great moments, some good character development and world building, all the things that are really good about Star Wars. And so it has it all.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be I'd say, yeah, an 8 or 9 out of 10, whatever word adjective that corresponds to.
Yeah, that's like incredible to great. The cool thing is, this is something that's going to continue to recur throughout the new Jedi Order from here. You'll have one character-centric book.
Mhm.
And so this is the Anakin book, and then Dark Journey is a Jaina book. Traitor is a Jason book. I had to look at the cover, see whose face is on it. And so they'll really focus. They'll eliminate everything else and they'll go tunnel vision on one particular character. And I much prefer that approach to what we got in Rebirth, which was all of the plot lines and all of the characters in 300 pages. So less than 292 flat.
But it did move pretty quick, and so that was nice. That I think I read those 2 books in like 2 or 3 weeks, pretty quickly. So that was nice.
I did the 2 in 3 days.
Oh, nice.
But it was a reread. I knew it was happening.
Yeah.
I knew it was happening in the first one. Oh, I could, even now, having read the second one twice, don't know what was happening.
Sheesh. And then I spent a day starting Star by Star, and I get 8 chapters in and realize I'm still in the prologue. And I think I'm on like chapter 4 now, because I just am still in shock that I read an 8-chapter prologue. Like, it's crazy. But yeah.
My first read through of Star by Star took me months, which is why we have the entire summer break to read it. Because we do not have live shows for the rest of the summer. That we do have some other cool Legends Look Back content planned. So we're not going to leave our listeners hanging. But it takes some time to read that bad boy. But the real reason is Rick is very busy in the summer.
Well, also I struggle with pressing the go live button, apparently. So we're going to give me some go live
some practice. Rehab. How many reps does he need, listeners? Before we go live again in the fall. But let's get into it. Obviously, the first book is a. Wait, did you want to give your rating on the second? Did you?
I would give it. So we'll say masterpiece, I think, with the first one, and we'll do a solid good probably for the second one. Yeah. Maybe a great, but it's good.
I think the writing style is incredible. But
and Han and Leia have some great moments. And
there's some plot points that are set up. That you don't see them yet because you haven't read the rest of the series. There's some plot points set up in Rebirth that are massive for where we're going in the rest of the series.
That's good.
So that's all I'll say about that. Back to Conquest. Let's talk about Anakin Solo. This is the book in which he really shines as a Jedi. And I would go so far as to say that Anakin Solo is among the truest embodiments of what it means to be a Jedi. What do you think about that? Do you agree, disagree?
Yeah, that's a good way to phrase it.
And in what ways does he do that?
I keep coming back to his problem solving. When he was on his own before Vua Rapang. Yeah, before he comes into the picture, which
Why do I have him with a French accent in my brain?
I don't know.
A Rylothian accent.
Yeah. Anyway, before he's really part of them as an ensemble, he has to survive by himself, and he makes some mistakes, but he's trying to do his best to listen to the Force, even though there's this whole Yuuzhan Vong are invisible in the Force, and man, it's really good. So he problem solves, he trusts the Force, but he also is somewhat respectful for life, and he has some moments where he causes some like natural world suffering, and he grieves that and feels that, and so there's a lot of really admirable things. Like, he's a good character, and that's shown.
Yeah, I would say, okay, in addition to the problem solving, I think for me, I would put his empathy in connecting with other beings, so not just people. So the fact that he's the first Jedi, I think, I could be wrong because I very much compartmentalize these books. I believe he's the first Jedi to cross really cross the bound, that border between the Jedi and the Yuuzhan Vong. There's this tremendous cultural separation between them. And
Yeah.
it's not just that they're able to have a conversation, but it's that they're able to get on one another's level. And so there's some credit to Vua as well. And he's shamed and rejected and vengeful, therefore has a reason to want to get against back at the Shapers. But the Anakin's able to begin to penetrate that cultural barrier and to figure out on the worldview level what is it that makes you tick.
Hmm.
And that to me is kind of like a Qui-Gon thing. Qui-Gon he'll relate to these species, these beings of all different sorts. And you hear Obi-Wan make a line about it in The Phantom Menace. Another one of these, what does he call them? Like
Oh yeah,
pitiful creatures?
something like that. We picked up another dependent. Something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very imperial the way he's, like, oh no, I can't believe you got another one of these stragglers. As if this has happened a bunch in their relationship, which we see some of in Legends in the Jedi Apprentice books, but largely kind of just have to interpret that this is something that Qui-Gon does. He's constantly relating to all different sorts of folks. And so I loved about Anakin. He's able to begin to penetrate. It's as if maybe the Yuuzhan Vong are largely misunderstood. That's all I'll say about that.
Interesting.
And so, but also villainous. And he has to explain to him, like, hey, coming into our galaxy and killing our people is not cool, dude. And he's like, oh, well, is it really that bad? And so they have some good nuanced conversation. I also like what he does with the lambent crystals.
Oh yeah.
We'll circle back to that.
Yep.
In a bit. So Anakin, I would consider among Anakin Solo, one of the truest Jedi, one of the greatest embodiments of what it is to be a Jedi. So we would consider his empathy, his connection, and his problem solving up there. It's not so Jedi-like of him, his love life.
Or is it?
In Legends, it flies.
Yeah.
Which is what I like. And this is the first introduction to Tahiri Veila in an adult Legends novel. Prior to that, she's been in the Junior Jedi Knights books, but this is her first introduction proper to adult Legends novels. She will forever, at this point on, be a staple among the core cast of characters.
That's great.
So it's really her introduction to the stage. Yeah, so with Tahiri, Rick, what do you think it will take for her to be able to triumph? She undergoes this horrible, traumatic experience here.
Yeah. So
what do you think it's going to take to overcome that and be able to push past that that psyche that's imbued into her brain as a result of her torture?
I'm not gonna lie, man. That her character and the dynamic between her and Anakin, that's one of the storylines that's keeping me invested in this series. One of the most, like it's pretty strong. And so I honestly didn't know if she was going to be redeemable at the end of Conquest, and then it's still kind of a question mark. What's going to happen, because she has struggles going forward, some relapses into Yuuzhan Vong mode, a little bit, but yeah, like that's complete, PTSD and then some. She was reprogrammed. And
you have no idea what's coming for her. It gets worse.
Oh boy. Yay. And so, man, good character. I'm excited.
Yeah. Also, now that Utini has gone all in on feet, I will say she's barefoot. There's a lot about her feet. So much Tahiri feet. There's a lot of feet talk. And shout out to the Utini show for always doing their YouTube videos in their bare socks.
Yep.
The people want to see the feet, y'all.
The dogs are out, as they say.
My dogs are barking. Yeah, and so if you want some feet, go to Legends and or the Utini show. But there's so much that happens to her, and on a serious note, the trauma that she undergoes is hard to even begin to process. That they would imbue her with a psyche to experiment on her, and this is what they do. They'll give people another arm or tentacle fingers, or they're always trying to do the biotechnology experimentation.
Or tragic Yuuzhan Vong backstory.
Oh man, and they push that to a whole nother level with Tahiri, and it's horrible. And I love that Anakin is like, hey, we'll find a way to figure this out, and I'm here for you, and this is who you are. It's kind of a 50 first sedates kind of a scenario there.
I also felt like it was kind of naive and like he's way over his head. It's kind of like slapping a band-aid on it, like, you're fine, everything's fine, this is fine, you'll be good, like ignoring the dormant personality.
Yeah, there's so much happening with that. I can't even begin to scratch the surface on it, but it's a great character, and I'm really glad that she emerges from the behind the scenes of Junior Jedi Knights and into the New Jedi Order proper. Let me ask you this: we'll jump out of order here. If you hadn't, Rick, read the Junior Jedi Knights books, do you feel like this book in particular, Conquest, would have left you hanging out to dry? Could you have figured out what was going on?
That's a really good question. I don't think I would have cared. I would have thought that adolescent Anakin is attracted to the first girl he meets. That's what it would probably feel like, without the backstory of their friendship. And so it does kind of seem from that perspective, maybe, that it's like, this is the only girl his age ish. And so he's got a crush on her. And so now he has to go rescue her. Like that would be kind of how it would read, I'd imagine.
I feel like it's okay to say, hey, there's some other books,
Yeah.
and it's about them training as kids and they're best friends. And I mean, that's kind of all you need to know.
Yeah.
My first read through of New Jedi Order, I had not read Junior Jedi Knights, and I understood the book just fine. And I was like, oh, Ikrit, he's that furry rabbit from the covers of those books. I don't know anything about him, but I'm sure I'll read them one day. And I did, and I loved them, and I would actually consider them among the best Star Wars books of all time. But
Yeah.
It does add a lot having spent some time with them, and now that culminates in Conquest. So shout out to Ikrit. Ikrit is a real one. He's one, however, that I will say, if you don't see him coming, you don't know that there's a furry little rabbit Jedi.
Yes. And again, knowing his story made that very powerful. His sacrifice, loss, however we want to view it. But man, that was really good. Really good.
Yeah, well, let's talk about some of the villains here. Nin Yim, the Yuuzhan Vong Shaper. This is a new cast that's introduced here, which then adds a lot of flavor to the Yuuzhan Vong culture. I love Skooma Joe's comment from earlier, not the feet ones, moving up. Okay, so he says, at this point in the series, I was starting to feel like the Vong just had organic stand-ins for every basic tech device. But Conquest does so much for the Vong world building. I love the Shapers. Love that comment. It's very true. The Shapers do add a lot of nuance and lore, and of course her journey into the next book, discovering, the Overlord's been lying to us. There's a huge problem here. And then he's like, you know what? How about you come hang out with me because you know too much, and I'm not going to kill you, but I think you can help.
Yeah.
So the Shapers really do give another flavor to the previous established Yuuzhan Vong classes. Rick, how did the Shapers come off to you? You feel like this was a good addition to the Yuuzhan Vong lore, or have we gone way too deep down the rabbit hole with Vong stuff at this point?
Nope, I'm here for it. I'm ready for learning more about what they do in the other cast. I also like the shamed ones, and learning about them and seeing the different stratification. But the Shapers are. It's interesting. Like I still have so many questions about how they do and don't share knowledge, and it kind of reminds me of like spy agencies mixed with like R&D.
Okay.
Where like you don't trust anybody. Your secrets have secrets, and at the same time, you're serving your people by developing state secrets, kind of thing. Like it's I don't know. That's a weird way to describe it, but I really liked it, and there's a religious aspect to it.
Yeah, I do like that.
A little troubling, but it's cool.
You've got a lot of lore here, not just the Shapers added, but also the shamed ones. So we learn a little bit more about the shamed ones, the fact that it's not all, hey, we're warriors and we're unified in purpose. In fact, there's casts that are not as happy with the other casts. In fact, there's rivalries within the casts, and one cast against another cast. And now all I can hear is myself saying the word cast over and over and over.
Yeah.
I'm picturing like the ones you got in middle school where everybody assigned them different cast.
It's a splint and a cast and a.
So some interesting stuff added there with the shamed ones, the Shapers. You've got the gods, and it gets complicated. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert in these things, but you will be after you read all 19 books in the New Jedi Order. Let's move on to Kip Duran, or as you call him, Kip Duran.
Yeah. Again, just how my reader has been reading it to me.
Okay, so Kip Duran, we were talking about this a little bit before the show, Rick. This is kind of an interesting philosophical debate. There's some really great philosophy in the New Jedi Order. Luke and Kip are on opposite sides of their approaches here. Kip Duran wants proactive action. Luke is more of like the old school Jedi philosophy of like Jedi just defend, never attack. In fact, his sleaziness, Kip's sleaziness, reaches new heights in this duology because he is wanting Jaina and the Rogue Squadron to help him obliterate what is essentially Yuuzhan Vong's civilians. He's discovered a ship well? What do they call it? Ship womb.
Yeah.
Yeah, a ship womb. They're building world ships, places for the Yuuzhan Vong to live. These are non-combatants. These are non-military civilians.
But they're like invasive though. Like they still have a.
It's gray.
Yeah, it's definitely gray.
It's a gray area, but they're non-military. And Jane is upset by that. He says it's a super weapon, which, like, hey, great job, Kip. There's a lot of super weapons in Legends.
Mm-hmm.
You yourself drove one at one point.
And they all have been looking for some, thinking maybe that'd be handy right about now. But yeah.
Sure. Hey, I feel like there's a super weapon under one of these rocks somewhere.
Yeah, where do we leave that Star Destroyer?
Anybody have an air tag? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so here we realize, okay, he's manipulating Jaina. Jaina does not take that well. Do you think, and we were talking about this some before the show, we're getting into some good stuff. Do you think his sleaziness is resultant of Luke's quick forgiveness and the lack of consequences? Going back to the Jedi Academy trilogy here, okay, where Kip was first introduced, the lack of consequences for all of his bad behavior preceding this event. So the backstory there is he was possessed by a Sith Lord ghost, Exar Kun. It's not my fault. It was Exar Kun. But nevertheless, there's no consequences. He commits genocide. I mean, it's horrible stuff.
Yeah.
And Luke is like, hey, listen, it wasn't him. He was possessed. The galaxy wants to see him incriminated, put on trial. Luke lets him off the hook.
Yeah.
There's no penance. And long story short, now Kip's a jerk. I'm of the opinion here. Now, both of us coming from Christian theological perspectives, go ahead and put that out on the table, play all of our cards here. I think, from my perspective, Kip is an example, prime example, of what we might call cheap grace. This idea that because he has not experienced consequences for his actions, he doesn't have respect for the gravity of the situation, for what the gift he's received from Luke Skywalker in being let off the hook. He deserves a life sentence for what he's done. He doesn't appreciate that. He rubs it in Luke's face, and his attitude is abhorrent. And I think it's a prime example of that taken to its extreme. All right, what do you think? Are you with me on this? I don't think we quite see it eye to eye.
Yeah, so way to break out the Bonhoeffer there. Pretty good.
Somebody had to do it, Rick.
Yeah, it was good. But yeah, so for me, up until this point, Kip has been all words and no action that has really been like that bad. Like, I get it. His perspective is be more aggressive in the war, but he's done some things, but he hasn't really stirred the pot in a major way. But this is a kind of a major way. This is when he starts to really, like some of you guys have said in the comments, like it's a point of no return. He crosses the line. And so, I think that phrasing of looking at how the events with Luke forgiving him and the way that discipline was handled, maybe that is what's influencing him, and it's making him not appreciate the second chance that he's been given.
Yeah, so he thinks he can get away with anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't appreciate the consequences of your actions, if you think your actions have no consequences, you'll do whatever you can get away with.
Yeah.
And therefore, bad behavior is resultant from grace. We think grace is a good thing. Like, let's give people forgiveness. Let's give them second chances. It can go too far. Sometimes we need to be hit in the face with the consequences of our actions and have to make atonement. And so I would have liked to have seen him have to make some penance, whether that's like write apology letters to the families of all the kids he murdered on Karita, or I don't know what that would look like.
We're gonna break out
20
the propitiation too, or are we just gonna move along?
This is my favorite word, propitiation.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting point here from Skooma, I think, is worth noting. He says, I can't remember if we talked about this, but I felt like Kip's role in New Jedi Order was meant to be an original character that they just applied to Kip. It doesn't feel like a natural continuation for me. The next comment then is also good. Kip was, if you know the whole story, Kip was very ashamed of his actions in the Jedi Academy Leviathan. That's a Dark Horse comic. I believe we covered it here on the show at one point. So, I can see that there's some discontinuity with the character from what happened before. Nevertheless, this is where we are, and so we've got to interpret what's in front of us. And so, however, the behind the scenes of what made Legends Legends for me is part of what makes Legends just great. It's so wacky.
Yeah, that's fair.
Absolutely. So, we talked about Kip, Anakin, Tahiri, Nin Yim. Who else deserves a moment in the under the Yavin Suns here? Shimra and Omini.
Yep.
What were your initial impressions of them, Rick?
Well, I've been wanting to know what's the big picture for the Yuuzhan Vong. Who are the real people who have power pulling the strings? And I don't know if this even answers those questions. But yeah, Shimra, what is his title? Supreme Commander or
Supreme Overlord?
Supreme.
I tried to get that added to my business card, but they just put lead pastor. So
I'll
take it.
do. I tried for Grand Moff, but that also was shot down. I think Grand Admiral might have been on there too, but
I had to get you some of those bars with the colors.
Oh yeah, some
put on your shirt.
What are they called? Epaulets, and I get all my insignia phrasing.
Insignia.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that was cool, but I want to know more. So they kind of just teased it a little bit, and then Omini, he was the Jester character, right? Who's like I'm trying to remember how we first introduced to him.
So he's assigned to assist Nin Yim as she's then recruited to work for Shimra in unlocking, the 8th cortex of the Shimra knowledge. So she's now the leader of the Shapers. She was apprenticed to Mazon. I keep calling her Megan.
And then, and so he's
These
the
are
one who
names
comes
I've never had to say out loud. They've just been in my brain for years.
Right? So he's the one who comes after her and is a complete imbecile on the surface, right?
Yeah, and he's like the Kowakian monkey lizard of the Yuuzhan Vong.
Yep. And so she's actually planning to kill him because he's incompetent. That's the role he's playing, and he actually is not just this nobody character. He actually is the right hand man of Shimra. And so
you think there's more than meets the eye there with Omini?
Oh yeah, totally.
Interesting.
Totally.
Well, I'm glad we finally get introduced to them. I was surprised that we're like 8 books deep into the New Jedi Order, and we just finally met the Emperor of the Yuuzhan Vong, the Supreme Overlord.
Right.
It's always one of those things that for me is surprising that in the original Star Wars trilogy, you don't meet the Emperor proper until Return of the Jedi. I mean, you get one scene with his hologram in Empire. And even then in the original, that was a monkey-eyed woman. And so it's crazy that you don't meet the Emperor until the climax of the trilogy. And so this does kind of follow that suit. That there's a slow burn to build up. You spend some time with Savang Law, and he's really upset, but you realize he's not quite the top of the totem pole. But one more character worth the spotlight here in our coverage of the Edge of Victory duology, and that is Ben Skywalker, a name I'm getting to say for the first time on Legends Lookback. Ben Skywalker makes his emergence into the galaxy far, far away by way of an extremely creepy scene. Or perhaps cool, depending on your take. Rick, what's your take? The scene in which Luke, Mara, and baby Ben unite their powers to use the Force to cast the comb spore virus out of Mara. Is it cool or is it creepy, Rick?
I probably read it too quickly to really grasp the fullness of that moment, but I remember it definitely felt weird. Like I was in an intimate moment that I should not have been part of.
Hey, should they really let readers in the room for this?
Yeah,
Can I snip
exactly.
the umbilical cord?
And so, yeah, I mean, it's beautiful as a family and how they're coming together and how the Force, joins them. But it felt like, I don't know, just the corny trope of like everyone has to hold hands and work together to,
Like, how do you portray a Jedi birth? It's got to be
that.
epic. So
Yeah,
I think it was an attempt at that.
yeah.
Though it's admittedly not necessarily extremely successful in my mind, but it is a book that when I look at the cover, the first thing I think about every single time is, oh, that's the book Ben was born in.
Yep.
Ben is not developed a whole awful lot in this series. He is a little bit later on, but then it becomes more and more of a character in Legacy of the Force and Fate of the Jedi. That's all I'll say about that. Love this comment from Skooma when I read New Jedi Order in 2022. By sheer coincidence, it happened to be Mother's Day when I read the part in Rebirth with Ben's birth, which was neat. Shout out to all the moms out there. Mom Squad, rise up.
Yep.
You're out there walking your car and driving your dog with your mom. Shout out to you. And
Yep.
I've said that wrong twice now on the show, haven't
That's funny.
I? So, a couple overarching questions before we call it quits tonight. And that is Anakin's lambent crystal. I love this little lore bit here. Anakin harnesses the lambent crystal, communication crystals or light sources grown from Yuuzhan Vong fruit, and he uses it for his lightsaber. And this is cool. Now, Rick, I want you to speculate a little bit here, not having read the series yet. How else do you think the Jedi or the New Republic can repurpose the Yuuzhan Vong biotech for their purposes? So here's an example of taking basically a light bulb and using it as a lightsaber crystal. How do you think then? What else could they do? We've seen a lot of Yuuzhan Vong biotech. Think outside the box.
Interesting. Yeah, I've not thought about this at all. So, my first thought was they're obviously going to make a lambent Death Star, but probably not that.
Gotta find a way
I'm
to
gonna-
blow it up.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be this giant lambent crystal underneath this temple they're going to use for the Death. Yeah. But it would be cool if they could shape, I guess, a way to introduce. I guess I'm asking for midichlorians, a way to introduce the Force into the Yuuzhan Vong, where there's some organic. Dang, it really is midichlorians, isn't it?
Hey, people love midichlorians. They're wildly successful in Star Wars.
So some way to connect the Yuuzhan Vong to the Force, where all of a sudden that advantage is given back. That would be cool. I mean, just the shapers. They start shaping a weapon, or they can tactically interrupt their communications, and they start sneaking up to the Villips, or something like that. I don't know.
Okay, so Villips, they could repurpose Villips somehow.
Yep,
for sure. You want me to tell you one?
Yeah,
I don't think it's spoilery.
Okay.
One advancement they are going to make eventually. I don't remember exactly which book this is introduced. It might be Dark Journey. The Jedi figure out how to use the Dovin basils as gravity well projectors to on the front of their X-wings to then suck in shields and then blow past them. It's all a little complicated, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Star Wars physics.
Yeah. They can suck the shields and blast them.
That's not how shields work.
Nailed it. If you can't shoot them, suck them. That's what I've always said. Suck the shields. Yep. Moving on. So there's a moral dilemma here, and this will be the last one for tonight. There's a moral dilemma with Jaina and the Yuuzhan Vong ship womb. You've got Kip and the non-combatant civilians that Rick thinks should be obliterated anyway. What choice would you make, Rick, with this moral dilemma? You're in Jaina's Jedi boots. Kip's pressuring you. You discover the truth. Those aren't super weapons. What then would you do? What's the right move? WWRD. What would Rick do?
First of all, Jaina's Jedi boots better become a boutique in the what's it called, Galaxy's Edge. Like that would be great. But I feel like in that conflict, like the military conflict they're in, they were already too committed that she couldn't do anything else but finish the mission. Um, and people were dying already. And so I think the right order of events happened where afterwards she's outraged. Afterwards, there's a huge, confrontation. But I don't know if she could have done anything different, because she was fed wrong information. She was misinformed.
Yeah. Now, you think that there's like perhaps a moral dilemma concerning whether or not they're even innocent civilians?
Well, honestly, I didn't pick up on that, so I'm interested to go back and see that. I just saw that they were ship wombs, and so I thought, okay, there's a tactical advantage to knocking out more ships, but I didn't either. I missed that or didn't consider that they're strictly civilian use. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest, I had to consult the Wook for some help on this because there's so many plot points in Rebirth that I get lost. There's a lot happening in that book. That's part of why I like Conquest so much. It's so zoomed in, focused on Anakin. And so you can sink into the character interactions that he's having, Tahiri and Yim and Vuabra Pung. And so very concentrated effort there in one direction, which I love. So Conquest, absolute stamp of approval. It's one of the main reasons I encourage people to read New Jedi Order. So you can get to this. You can really see the heart of a Jedi, somebody who then has to befriend somebody who's from the other side of the tracks, and their philosophical conversations. His with Rapung are really compelling, and Keyes writes that dialogue very well. Represents both sides of that. Leaves me like, oh man, they're both making great points. And I think it's really well done.
Something we didn't think of, but it just made me think of it. Something we didn't talk about. I mean, this really caught my attention. But the way that the Yuuzhan Vong are offended when you call them the Vong, like there's a whole there's something there that we haven't really gotten into that we're barely understanding their language and their culture, but just the way that the Prime Galaxy folks are even talking about these people or viewing them, like they're clearly not seeing them the same. And it's an us versus them, through and through. And so it's, I don't know. There's a lot of that. It was really interesting.
The only person who has attempted diplomacy was Elago Sakla, who then was beheaded and his bones were mailed back to the Jedi in a box.
With gold.
So he did try. Like he saw that the only way forward is to try to understand each other. And they said, understand this, and obliterated him and put him in a box. So this time Anakin's able to sneak in behind enemy lines, and so he goes in as a slave and has to befriend someone who's the lowest of the low among the Yuuzhan Vong, and I find that very compelling, very compelling.
Yep. And then that coupled with Tahiri's knowledge when she comes out of that, like a lot of insight into the Yuuzhan Vong world. So we'll come back to that shortly.
A little bit of romance to spice it up too.
Just enough.
They get trapped in a storage locker together, and they think they're dying. So hey, I guess if we're dying, we might as well kiss, right?
I guess. And then I will say
we're in separate states.
Yeah, totally. I love how in this era of Star Wars books there has that romance, but it's other than like the weird stuff we talked about with like the birth. There's nothing like super explicit where it's like I'm uncomfortable reading this. I'm uncomfortable for different reasons at times reading these, but it's not like just super over sexualized, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have got some fun stuff coming down the pipeline here for the summer, though. Legends Lookback, we've got a pretty strict summer break that we take because 1, sanity; 2, Rick's job; 3, Emily's moving countries; 4, Freddie's moving states. I'm the only one with a stable existence this summer, so I'm going to be cranking out some content. Trevor's going to do an episode or 2 with me. We've got an author interview or 2 that we're going to throw at all of you. Some fun stuff that's coming your way. So we're not going to leave you hanging with no content, though. Break from the formal live shows for June and July. We'll be back with a star-by-star roundtable in August. So keep up your New Jedi Order reading. That's your summer reading. We'll have a test on the first day of school, okay, once we resume. But in the meantime, there's a ton of great Utini content to check out. In the meantime, Rick, what are some of those other Utini shows the folks can check out?
There's a lot and more coming all the time. So right now we have the Utini Avatar show, the Utini Baseball show, the Cosmic Force, the Star Wars Archives, and the flagship show, the Utini show.
Is that the flagship show?
I feel like it's a flagship
Corey
show.
told me this was the flagship show. Hey,
No.
somebody call Dr. Bossman.
I mean, we're the flagship show of the Utini Vault, maybe, but
We're the longest running current Utini podcast at the moment.
hey, I mean,
there's something.
Yep. That's cool.
So this has been a lot of fun. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us tonight. Now, thanks to the proud members of the United on Patreon. A special thank you to Brian Dooley, Carl Sander, Michael Fry, and Raymond Baczynski on our High Council, and James T., Ashley Ingalls, Colton Fife, and Chris Carrizo at our Captain tier as well for their amazing support. Catch us every other Tuesday night at 8:30 Central, except in the summer, at youtube.com/@UtiniVault. Ring that bell if you want to get notified whenever we go live. Remember to sub to the channel and leave us a review in your podcast platform of choice. Use that summer break wisely, y'all. Leave us some reviews. In the meantime, if you'd like your thoughts read on the show, you can email us at legendslookback@utini.com. Rick, remind me to check that email tomorrow. We're on Twitter at legendslookback, also known as X. Let's keep the party going and hop over in Discord, where we are continuing the conversation with other Utinians about this week's episode in the hashtag Legends Look Back channel. Nope, hashtag Legends Books channel. And in fact, no matter what Legends book you're reading, day or night, no matter what time zone you're in, if you pop over in that channel, I guarantee you somebody will be willing to talk about that book with you. And that's one of the coolest things about our community. I love it for that. All right, that's it for us. Keep exploring, keep sharing, and let's keep on expanding the universe together. May the Force be with you.